Hey, hey. All right. So this one will be a very interesting one, a lot different than some of the other things that I've chatted about. But it's been a topic of conversation with one of my mentees. And so I want to share some of kind of what we've been chatting about with each of you. And this is around, kind of sustaining success. Early on, I wasn't a mentor or anything like that, but, I was pretty young when I bought a business and ended up having success. Also, had some major failures that I had to learn from on my own. And my goal with all of this is having y'all not have to learn through with by making those same mistakes that I've made. And what I've learned as well is like it's not just about the tactics. Like I can give you tactics all day long. It's really about some small shifts that you want to make internally. And I've seen the impact of what happens if you have the tactics and you reach a certain level of success. And then you don't have those internal things, and it crumbles. I had a cousin of mine who I don't think he'll mind me sharing this with early on was probably the very first person that, I was just out there doing things. I was probably 24, he's probably like 19. And was one of the first people that came to me about like kind of mentoring and that kind of thing. And he was working a manufacturing job. We ended up getting him out of that. He had he got into a real estate portfolio, ended up in the city of his dreams with a mortgage business. And it came crumbling down, not because he had all the tactics, it's like I said, it's like freaking 19. He had learned this stuff. It's just very, very smart. Um, Guy still obviously still is a very, very smart guy. But the real kind of big thing, and now he's grown kind of internally and is able to look back on all of that. But age isn't a thing. I've had a mentee that is on the older side that, built a very huge portfolio. And we're kind of talking things. I'm like, okay, like, what's the goal here? What are you doing? Like, what are you trying to achieve? And he's like, hey, no, like, get out of my way. Like, I got this now. Like, just a huge amount of businesses. And then something similar happened there. And so I'm really intentional about the fact that if you have these tactics and you're not doing this internal work alongside of it, it's worse. Like you can end up with a nightmare of a life, nightmare of a business, and very either unhappy or just really have have things implode on top of you. And so this is important. A lot of times people just want, okay, what's the next tactic? But I think you want to learn the tactics. And I've got plenty of videos in the Patreon. We're killing it with just like all of the stuff that we're putting to work in the market, which is great. But this is actually even more important. I think you can actually, if you have this stuff, you don't even need the tactics because you're going to be successful regardless of what you're up to. So I want you to think about something. This is a kind of interesting way to come back to what I was just mentioning, but think back to 2013. It was the summer of 2013, and some of y'all might recognize the name. The name is Edward Snowden. You can put in the chat if you. Also, by the way, as y'all are coming in, like the video, say hello. Stephen did the right thing. Popped in, says, "What's up, Ace?" I certainly appreciate that, Stephen. What up, homie? So say hello, but let me know if you remember Edward Snowden. So he was this NSA/CIA computer whiz that dropped a complete bombshell at that point on the world that we have grown to just accept as reality, which is very, very sad. The moment that this came out, it should have been a revolution against the government. But he leaked these NSA documents that unveiled something called PRISM, which was a huge prism with a M, not prison. But it was this covert surveillance system that the NSA had been doing for 13 years. And it was almost like a movie. They basically had all of this surveillance that was going on, and what Snowden leaked was just a small little part of everything that came out afterwards. But he basically was exposing that the NSA was going behind the scenes into Silicon Valley, getting backdoor access to everything, backdoor access to Google, backdoor access to Facebook, backdoor access to Apple, just everything you're doing online. So the emails, calls, blah, blah, blah. So it was just a bigger deal than like some privacy breach. It was basically an all out assault on what we thought were freedoms and rights that we had as far as our information. And unfortunately, like this was such a really big deal. But, unfortunately for Snowden, he shared this with America, but it flung him into exile. And he got slapped by the U.S. government, saying that it was that he had charges under Espionage Act, which is absolutely ridiculous. But he did light this fuse. Everyone in the government basically can peek into our personal lives and personal information. So that's the side note to set up like how this relates to us today, because the real truth of what they were doing is a lot darker, because it wasn't just about surveillance. It was also about the ability to manipulate and control and use the internet. A lot of times they blame they say, oh, Russia's doing this to America, and they're like playing the game with our social media and all this. But the reason that they're saying it's like they already do it, and Russia's like, oh yeah, we can do that to your people as well, and we're doing it around the world. But they are essentially turning people without them knowing it into these pawns using personal data, while also obviously used as a tool for profit and that kind of thing, which is one of the reasons that I am adamant that you understand the strategies behind the modern media mogul, because I want to get you on the other side of that table. Because there's at this point Snowden proved like, hey, you can tell everybody this, nobody is going to fight against it, everybody's just going to let it happen. So you're either going to be one of those pawns, or you're going to learn how to play the game on the other side and not kind of be this powerless thing. So, I want to talk about just being able to take a little bit more control of your identity. And this isn't, just the run of the mill type of self help type of thing or woo woo type of stuff. This is, I've just seen it. Like I've seen it with my clients, I've seen it with my mentees. It's just real. It's time tested. It's, a way for you to be able to break free and live life on your terms, which I think most people don't even realize. That's the sad thing, is most people really don't realize they're not living life on the true terms that they want to live it on. They're living it on terms that they were given by society, their parents, school, just really brainwashed. Like you've got to understand, in order to get to like where you really want to be, you got to shake off the brainwashing. And that's one of the things that when I'm talking to clients and working with people, it's like, let's get really really clear on you and what you are looking for and your expectations for yourself. And it starts with that. It literally starts with, what are your expectations for yourself? And for the average person, they don't realize that the lowest level of your expectations, that you're willing to accept, that's literally what you're going to achieve. So we'll get there. But one of the things about kind of this way of thinking and transforming your expectations of yourself is that it changes your identity. It just changes how you see yourself. It's, how, when I get out of shape, how I get back into shape. It's, how I built a life. And, started to a buddy of mine and has a cool project he's working on in Mexico. And it's talking about, man, like you've got this network that's all over the world, like how do you maintain that? But it's just envisioning, okay, this is the kind of life that I want to build. So the first step is understanding who you are right now. Basically, who you are right now is has nothing to do with like how you were born. How you were born, you're basically this blank slate, and you had really unlimited potential. And then you started to have experiences. You obviously were given a name. You're like given an identity where everyone around you said, hey, here is who you are. But the truth is you aren't what they told you you are. So what if you could just rewrite that narrative? Now obviously, like anybody who's been brainwashed, it takes a lot of work to rewash your brain, right? So I'm 40 years old, like I've had 40 years of brainwashing. Um, but I think that it obviously it can be done, and that's where your consciousness and your power of choice comes into play. So you've got to challenge all of these little nuanced things that you don't even, it's the beliefs that you're not even aware that you believe. It's the stories that you are telling yourself now because you've been brainwashed by someone else that this is the reality, but it's really just a story. And it's breaking out of those kind of limiting beliefs. Now, here is the really cool part of this is you've got this little thing that is called your reticular activating system. And it's basically a filter that's in your brain. It's all about what you're focused on in your life. And, you're only going to achieve things based on how you see the world and what you're focused on and how you're filtering these. But your focus can literally change your the way you see the world, which is going to change your life. So I want to talk about how I put this into my life. And one of the little exercises, I'm going to take y'all through an exercise. So I want you, if you got a pen nearby, paper nearby, I want you to grab that. So one of the things that was a real game changer for me is basically going through identity reprogramming meditations. And I feel like it's basically like a shower for your identity. It's like washing down all of the starting to wash down all the crap that's in your brain, the limiting beliefs. And one of the things that is the most powerful thing, like I mentioned before, is really expectation. Like if you just have a level of expectation for yourself, and this is what I've found in people that are making, outrageous amounts of money. It's just an expectation. It's not like a goal. It's not like I think that making goals can be bad if not done in with the kind of this method. One of the example methods that we're going to walk through, because it's really just like, okay, like if I can't imagine not making if you're at $5,000-$10,000 a month, like I can't imagine not making that. Like that becomes really your attitude and your identity, and then your identity starts to rewire your brain so that that becomes just your level of expectation for yourself, and eventually you start to get that. I had one of my mentors years ago who I was very proud, and I mentioned this on the channel because it's a funny story, but I was very proud of where I was at that point. And he's asking me about all these things, and has several businesses, and a bunch of real estate, a bunch of stuff that he was right, I need to get rid of. But he was looking at everything, and I'm telling him, about what I'm up to, and he's looking at my financials, and he's like, man, you are doing so much work for so little money. And at that point, I'm like in my mid 20s making six figures, figuring like, man, I'm really doing well. He's like, dude, like, look at what you're like, you're just all over the place doing all of these things. And you're not just lasering in and achieving a certain goal. So the first part is this kind of reprogramming meditation. We'll talk about in a minute. The second part is building out a personal roadmap, and this is unique and different for everybody. But for me, it redirects me consistently to what I'm gunning for in my life. Now, even when you have goals and you aren't using a specific process, you just review goals daily over time, you're still going to look at some of those goals and just not going to click anymore. And that's great. Like that should be what's happening, because it means that you're getting sharper and sharper about what you really want. I have mentees where it's like, it's like, okay, I'm really getting a lot clearer. I need this, not this. And so that is a good thing. As long as it's not, okay, well, I'm just going to give up on this thing because it wasn't easy. It actually, you should enjoy this process, even when it takes a long time. So this intro step we're going to talk about today, if you've got a pen and paper, you can go ahead and pull that out. And I want you to start by jotting down 3 goals you want to smash over the next like 12 months. We're coming up on January, which is one of the reasons I want to do this. I want you to spend time planning this before we get to January. You're like, oh, here are my resolutions. Here's my goals. So, for me, recently I've had a goal that was, I want to take a company public. I wanted to complete a deal on an overseas hotel. I had a health goal around, improving my mile running time. These were all things that were on my past list that I was able to achieve. But in each one of those cases, I had to become a different person. So, I had to become the type of person that could be the CEO of a publicly traded company. I had to become the type of person that can negotiate, do a deal on a hotel overseas. I had to become a runner. When I was in high school, I played, but I wrestled, and there was just no running. Like if you did anything, you ran around the mat a couple times. So running was just never a part of working out for me. And it's just a very powerful shift in identity when I dated a marathon runner. So I dated a marathon runner, and it was the first time I remember going to her house the first time, and I knew she was a runner. She was, looked like a runner. I do like runners. They have great bodies, but she looked like a runner, was a runner, and I knew she ran marathons. But it wasn't until I went to her house that I realized she won marathon. So she was actually like had these trophies like number one. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like it had never even crossed my mind that normal humans were winning marathons. And she had just all these marathons that she had won. But one of the things that was powerful is because she ran so much, and she'd be like, oh, I went for a 10-mile run that day. It's like, this was mind blowing for me. Like for me to run half a mile at that point was so out of my reality, just was outside of my identity, that was just mind blowing. And so it's got me to start running, and so that became a part of my workout. Now, it's a larger part of my workout. I went from half a mile to a mile to a few miles a day. I'm not trying to do 10 miles. I'm never going to reach her level, but this is the real point there. And this is what we try to build in each of our communities. So whether, I love the folks that are in the acquisition holdco, because as each one of them is doing deals, I just see the light in the other people's eyes. It was like, oh, okay, now I really can do that. And then they close the deal, and it just becomes this snowball. And that's what we've been able to experience, because you're building a relationship with these other people. You can see, it's one thing for me to say, oh, I've done this next deal. I've done this next deal. It's another thing for you to see the person that started where you are, and now they're closing deal after deal. And now you're challenged that, okay, this definitely works. That person is just like me. Let me go and achieve that thing. And so this is important in every area of your life. If you're not getting around other folks, I mean, I saw this thing. It's like you can't expect to be a millionaire if you're surrounded by thousandaires. And that's been one of the things that I've greatly benefited from. But you got to be around people and, have people that are pouring into you that are on the same path as you, that are head on that path as well. So I want you to take the pen and paper, write down 3 goals that you're going to achieve in 2024. And here's another part of this. It's really not even about achieving the goal. As crazy as that sounds. What I've realized over time, it's the thing is what I was just talking about even with my goals about becoming the person and the type of person, having the identity of the person that achieves that goal. So I had to become the type of person that took a company public, and I was studied. I started to build relationships with other people. I started to look at, their habits, how they think, all those things. And if you look at this, and I'm like I mentioned, it's not about achieving the goal. You got to ask yourself, man, what are you going to pour your life into if it's not working on becoming the person that does the things, that has the habits, that eats the food, all those things? If it's not pouring your life into that, then what are you doing? But that's where you have to get. You've got to get to that point where you are really just working on yourself. Everything is about working and improving who you are. It's not about these tactics, like I was saying at the beginning of the video. The tactics really can get you in trouble if you haven't built the identity that can handle and deal with the new problems. Biggie has one of the greatest quotes ever, which is more money, more problems. So if you're not ready for those bigger problems, you're going to be in trouble. And you end up on this treadmill, basically, of tactics trying to stave off those other issues. So I want you to be all in on these things. When it's a big deal, I want you to put things on the sheet of paper, um, and understand that this is a big deal, and I'm all in. No matter how much work it takes, no matter how long it takes, I'm all in on becoming the person and being the person that has the habits, has the work ethic, connects with the other people that I need to connect with in order to achieve whatever the goal is. So, another part of this is you want to pick goals that stretch you but aren't completely pie in the sky. And this is really important because you're just trying to get to the next step. Like, your goals should be a stretch, but it shouldn't be some outrageous thing that's just completely beyond your reality at this point. Which, this is an art and it's not a science. There are a lot of people that have the pie in the sky goals, um, based on where they are today. And it's not to say that you can't have the pie in the sky, because you can achieve that. But for the goal, it's not just like, okay, I'm going to go from, making 2,000 a month to 200,000 a month. Like, that is too much of a leap for that to be the next goal. But if you go to 20,000 as the next goal, then and you get there very quickly, hey, now let's go to 200. So a way to think of this is, you want to lean over the edge without just falling off into the abyss. So if you think you can make $10,000 a month, the stretch would be, okay, I'm going to do 20,000 instead of I'm going to do 100,000. So not too easy, but not too many levels away from where you are right now. That is the sweet spot for these goals. Now, for the next step, and feel free to work on this after, but feel free also to pause. So for each one of the goals that you wrote down, you want to write a solid reason why it's important to you to achieve it. So why do you want to achieve it? This isn't about ticking some boxes. Like, oh, I'm gonna get. It's not about bragging rights, and it really shouldn't even be. I try to get away from it feeding my ego. You know, I want it to be something that really connects with me in a deeper way. So, this is something that should really fuel your fire and not be, oh, I want to brag to my friends that that's how much I'm making, or all my high school friends are going to think I'm so amazing when I get this number of followers on Instagram. Instead of those types of things, you want to find that deep seated reason that just it's going to push you to go the extra mile, because it's going to tap into something, especially when you go to this next part of the final part of the exercise. The next part is to start to build out and sculpt your identity. And one way to think about this is like separating it from yourself and just looking at the character of who you're going to be. So, like I was mentioning, you're building relationships with people that are achieving those goals, and you're picturing who you'd be when you're hitting those goals. So what would your style look like? Literally, like, how would you dress? What is your vibe going to be? What are you doing when you first wake up in the morning? What's your routine when you're going to sleep? What are your personality traits, the quirks, all of these things, and most importantly, like the daily habits and the scheduling and all those things. And you're literally going to build out based on these three goals, just the blueprint to the character that you're going to become. And I also do believe in, with each one of those, trying to tie an affirmation to it. So it's almost like having a mantra. Or if you don't like mantras too woo woo, you could just call it a power statement. But I want to design a mantra around each goal that resonates, in the same deep seated way with me. So it's not about looking forward, and it's not only about just looking forward to get this. So the kind of final piece that I like to review as I'm putting together this document is looking to the past. So I want to list, just like I did, I want to list things that I've already achieved. So like I was mentioning before, like I've had taken a company public on my list. I've had those things that I mentioned. There's a lot of different things. Having my first private equity fund, like that was on a list, do whatever, 10 years ago. So having these things on your list that you've achieved, you're putting that in a separate part of the list as the reminder. So these are your proof points. This shows you, like, here is the journey that you've taken. Here's each of the milestones that show that you are capable of achieving things. And it's one of the big mistakes that people make is, once you've achieved a small goal, you belittle it. It becomes a small thing because you've already achieved it. But you want to put yourself in that place, like, man, when you felt like that was unsurmountable. It can be small things. It could be a test that you thought was going to be so impossible when you're in college, for some of the younger folks. So it doesn't have to be these big things. It's just like you were able to figure this out, and then you're able to achieve it. All right. So now for this last part of this process and exercise that hopefully y'all will complete before the beginning of the year. So take a minute. If you need to pause the video, I want you to start to craft your identity. And here's what I would love for you to do. If you're already in the Patreon, shoot me your document. Shoot me, what your goals are and kind of what this identity looks like for you. If you're not in Patreon, you can send a message through the Patreon, even if you're at the free level. And what I want to do is hold you accountable. So we're going to do some check-ins. I've got my assistant. We're going to do some check-ins next year just to remind you. And this isn't a one and done deal. This is something that you should be reviewing every morning. For me, I literally, like what I was talking about a minute ago, like you want to meditate on this. Keep your goals, keep the reasons behind them, keep the ideal character that you've designed, keep those past achievements. You want to keep all of that in front of mind. And this is one of the ways that you kind of wash that past identity. It's like the work of reprogramming. You're literally brainwashing yourself, brainwashing your consciousness, because it becomes very difficult. I mean, if everything that's been poured into you so far, and this is just the reality, everything's been poured into you so far, and the identity that you are has gotten you to where you are right now. Who you are is what's gotten you to where you are right now. That's just and if you don't change who you are right now, it's going to be very difficult to get to where you want to be. Now, if you're totally fine with where you are right now and you're with that identity and you're fine with that identity, then that's all good. I feel like no matter what, life is about growing endlessly. Um, but I think it becomes very, very difficult if you're not working to grow your identity, to grow your goals, grow your business, and have all of the other things that you want. And this is what the crux. I know, again, this is going to be one of those videos that people are like, I just want, what's the next no money down tactic? And, we're closing no money down deals every day right now because in the modern media mogul, those guys are absolutely killing it. But this stuff is more important. So, this is also just heads up. I'm gonna skip this last exercise. I want y'all to do this. Come back, do a separate video on kind of final part of this. But one of the things that I'm going to do in 2024 is, I think it's going to be a pretty cool opportunity to work directly with me one-on-one. I'm going to do one-on-one again beginning in the new year, just because that's been really rewarding as I've been connecting with people. It's going to be an epic idea and concept that's really unique. So if you're interested in that, definitely the only people I'm gonna announce it to are in the Patreon. So set up, even if you want to do a free account, you won't get access to all the stuff, but you'll still be basically on the list to get access to that, where I'm gonna basically have 5 folks that I'm working with. All right, enough talk. It's time to take control. I want y'all to wake up, start making some things happen, start living a life that you just truly deserve. All it takes is putting in this different kind of work. It's not like this is more work, it's just a different type of work. And I think the really important thing to remember is the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Just gets more and more difficult. The identity gets more and more ingrained. But at the end of the day, the choice is yours. Let's do this. I'm excited to see some of y'all's documents in the Patreon. Got a couple comments, and we'll call it a night. Phil, my man, what is up? Phil and I met years ago. So his brother and I hung out in Argentina. Or no, I met Phil first. Phil, we met in Medellin. So we met in Medellin. At that point, Phil and I were talking very early on. I was, working on taking a company public, and he was telling me about what his brother does in the public space with public companies. I'm like, dude, what are the odds of this? And so we're hanging out in Medellin. Another time I'm in Argentina closing a deal. His brother came down, we had an amazing time, ate amazing food. He and his wife, we just had an absolute ball, was able to pick his brain early on in the public, in the publicly, traded space. So that was really amazing. I think it's so funny, Phil. Like I was just talking to somebody else on the previous call with a mentee, and we were talking just about this whole concept of building a worldwide network of folks, and you are somebody who's doing business overseas, which is very cool. He said he's got a business where he connects jobs. We got to catch up, man. Hit me. We got to catch up. It's been a while. So he helps people get. He has basically, I guess, like a staffing company in Mexico, and Colombia, and Argentina, just doing some really amazing stuff. Big business style. Big business style. What's up, Durable? We got in the house. What's I says? Great stuff, Ace. Very glad to have you in the Patreon, my man. So thanks for coming on. Phil says, thanks, Ace. Good stuff as always. Thank y'all for popping on. And I look forward to seeing what y'all come up with. Talk to y'all soon.